Hi there, students. Flux. Flux is a noun, both countable and uncountable, and it could also be a verb as well. Let's see, probably the most common phrase with flux that you will know is in a state of flux. And flux is talking about a state of change, a state of ongoing change, something that's changing. It becomes different. So the world affairs are in a constant state of flux. They are constantly changing. The world is in a continual flux. It's continually changing. So flux or a flux is a state that is always changing. The market values for different things is in a state of flux, but normally that state of flux moves upwards. And then a flux, a flow, the act of flowing. So there was a flux of buyers who came into the shop. Notice influx, outflux, flowing in, flowing out. There is an influx of tourists in beach towns during the summer. So a flux, a flow. Yeah, and if something's always flowing, then it's always changing as well. In physics, the flux is the flow of energy, or the rate of transfer of energy. And finally, we have flux as well. If you're soldering, if you're using a soldering iron, you have a chemical agent called a flux, which cleans oxides off your surface so that the two metals will solder together better. Okay, so flux, a state of change. Our plans are in flux. Yeah, our plans are chopping and changing. They're always adjusting. In business, you always need to be aware, because business markets are always in a state of flux. They go up and down. Everything is in a state of flux, in a state of continual change. In a city, you will see a flux of cars going into the city in the morning, which cause a rush hour, and a flux of people coming out of the city in the evening. So it's this flow of people. And then, as I said, a flux, it's something that makes it easier to solder, to join two pieces of metal by melting as well. Flux, so a flow, a flowing liquid. The flux of magma from the volcano is slowly decreasing. I guess the flux of a tide. The tide is flowing in. Yeah, there's a flux inwards towards the beach, and then as the tide goes down, there is a flux outwards. Okay, and then something that's in continual movement, especially of large numbers of things. So if you see a murmuration of starlings, they're these birds that all fly together. The shapes that they make is is always in constant flux, constant frequent change, fluctuation. Okay, so yeah, it's in a state of flux. I'm thinking of Back to the Future and the flux capacitor. I'm not sure what the flux capacitor actually means in that. The flow of time, I think, is probably what it's referring to. But in a state of flux, in a state of continuous change, my plans are in a state of flux. Okay, a flux, a flow. Okay, a flow of people. I guess in medicine as well, a flux, a discharge of blood or something else from within your body. It's a flow outwards. Okay, so flux. Flux, the process of flowing. Yeah, the flux across a membrane. The amount of radiation coming out of a particular area, the flux, yeah, the flux of radiation. But in a state of flux, in something that's in flux, is in a state of continuous change. It's always varying. It's always changing. Yeah, so flux, a flow. It's something that's constantly flowing, constantly changing. Maybe your attitudes are in a state of flux. Yeah. Okay, maybe your mind is in a flux about making a decision and you don't know what to do. Yeah, so you're in a flux until you make up your mind, until you make your decision. So in a state of flux, in a state of change, a flux of words, a flow of words. I hope my flux of words doesn't dry up while I'm making this video. Okay, so flux, a state of flux is constantly changing. A period of economic flux, instability, transition, unrest. Yeah, the flux of cosmic rays coming in from the universe. Well, most of those are absorbed or diverted by our atmosphere, by the ozone layer. So flux, movement. Okay, flow of something. Okay, so a state of flux. Let's see, formality. State of flux. 5.56 in formality. I think I'm going to give it a 6, a 5.5, well, somewhere between those two. I'm thinking about whether you could use it informally. Maybe. I think it's better to define it as something you use semi-formally. Semi-formal conversation, semi-formal writing, or something very formal as well. That would be no problem. And then this comes through French from Latin, fluxus. Fluxus, talking about a flow, from fluo to flow. So enough. If you enjoyed the video, give it a rating, subscribe to my channel, and I will see you soon. Bye for now. Flux.